All right, so Death Lineup, the quick and dirty edition of the show. We're just going to hit a couple of things on this Friday night and let people get to their weekends here. So, Bri, I think you caught up to the games, right?
I'm caught up now. It's
You
been a
know what?
minute.
Now that I realize, and now that I just asked you that, I think I still have like 5 minutes left of last night's game to watch. But I was keeping track of the score as it was
Yeah,
happening.
yeah.
So I kind of know what happened, but yeah, I haven't actually finished that game.
I think literally last pod we did this that I was on. I said I want to say it was literally after the Denver game. I said that it's interesting to kind of be a little behind on the games and then get to kind of all watch them in one go as opposed to waiting days between games because you can kind of see, it's just like a different viewpoint. Like I feel like I'm seeing the adjustments they make on a game to game basis quicker, but then also being like, okay, there's the same issues. I don't know. It's just a different perspective watching kind of everything in really like a 3 hour window, watching like 4 games in a 3 hour window. So, what I did notice though is because I watched Sacramento, I want to say the day before the Clippers game, and you see the collapse, right? And then in the Clipper game, in the second or the third quarter, they start coming back, and it's like, well, here we go again.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know what the first topic is, but I don't feel confident that they're going to beat the Clippers without Wiggs.
So I guess the first topic is, are the Warriors actually at a crossroads here? That is the first question.
A crossroads in what sense? Like if they're a contender or not?
Do they have to make changes, or are they going to be able to run out? Because we just celebrated this special day of 11/30/23, right? And it really, what it did is it just made you realize, like, okay, these are the guys. These have been the guys in the first 19 games. Can they still be the guys for the Warriors to compete and make a playoff run? From what you've seen, we're almost a quarter of the way through the season.
I feel like what we talked about in the Denver game still presents itself. The first topic we talked about after the Denver game was it feels like they need a secondary scorer. What JP was last year, kind of what Clay was last year as well. Just someone who can create off the dribble and get a bucket, and his name is not Stephen Curry. It still feels like that's potentially the issue. And it feels like Clay, if we want to give Clay the longest leash possible, he's a legend in his own right for the Bay. He's going to have a statue at some point, right? But it's interesting that his issues aren't necessarily like, not only is it like a shooting slump, it's like boneheaded errors, like rookie mistakes that you see from Clay, where there's consecutive turnovers, and then, he's getting mad at himself. And I'm not necessarily saying that advocating for Clay to be moved, because I tried to trade him last year as well. But I just think that it's an interesting slump where it's not necessarily like, and he's kind of breaking out of the shooting slump, but it's just really seeing like, it's almost, I don't know, non-athletic errors where it's like, it just seems like almost every other player in the NBA can make the easy pass, but when Clay has to do a turnaround pass, it takes too long, and the defense is able to anticipate it. Is that because he's unathletic and he's not able to, I don't necessarily know, but to answer your question, I am not as optimistic as I was entering the season, and I think that's probably what everyone would. It's probably the easy answer there, but I don't know. What do you think?
I think the hard part is the Warriors are forced to be patient because that's just what they do. They were patient in 2022, and they just got to the tournament.
But they got to like a 17-2. Are you talking about the championship year?
Yeah.
But they start. I mean, I don't know if they were patient. They started off 17-2 or whatever they were.
You remember how the last 20 games of that season went? Like, it wasn't great.
It wasn't great, but you also had the Stephen Curry wasn't healthy. Like I think that another thing I wanted to bring up is that I feel like this team can get to like a very near brink of potential contender status with this unit. And I just think that, but we're just going to keep watching, and we're going to be like, like, oh, we're so close, but once Wiggs comes back, or we're so close, but once CP comes back, or we're so close. And I just feel like that issue is going to keep presenting itself. Whether I don't know if they'll ever be like fully healthy, but it always feels like there's going to be like a, they're right there, but I swear that just this one piece comes back, or this one thing goes right, and it's going to go our way. And I feel like that's kind of how I've felt watching these games lately. And it's just like the reality of it is that we're an old team, and guys are going to miss games, and that's what we knew going into this, getting injury prone CP to pair with Stephen Curry, who hasn't played 65 games, who's pair with in a couple of years, pair with Clay, who has his own injuries. Draymond missed, already getting suspended. Like, again, I feel like as I'm talking, I keep leading to the answer of like, we need to make a move. And I'm still not 100% sure, because again, I don't know what that move even looks like. I know a lot of people are going for Siakam, which is what I went for last year too. And then I've seen Lauri Markkanen, and I'm like, why would Utah get rid of Lauri Markkanen? That makes no sense. I don't know why his name's out in any trade rumors, but it seems to be. There's the OG Anunoby thing. Okay, well, very
Danny
creative.
Ainge wants draft picks more than likely, is my guess.
But my thing is that if you trade like your best player, wouldn't you want to have confidence that you already have someone who can like be as good as that guy? Like, I don't know, the Steph Monte crossroads, trade Monte because you think Steph's going to be better at some point. Like, the Utah Jazz don't really have anyone. It's like Larry's 26. He could fit in their little rebuild era. He's on a $16 million a year contract for the next 2 years. Like, I don't know why. I guess Danny Ainge though is just like that guy's not lost a trade in like the past decade. So I bet he'd get an insane return.
Okay,
But
here's what I think about this season. It's going to be the first season where the Warriors do not really have an excuse as to maybe, and this is all depending on if they're not as good as we thought that they were, because you can go back to 2019. Katie gets hurt, Clay gets hurt. That's the reason why they lost the championship. 2020, Steph misses the entire year. 2021,
no Clay the entire
no Clay the entire year as well. 2022, they had the excuse ready, which is Clay coming back off of injury, and then they put it together. 2023, Jordan Poole and Draymond, the punch.
Wiggins.
And yeah, the Wiggins thing was, we still don't even really know a lot about that situation. But yeah, he missed, and then he tried to come back at the end for the playoffs, and he was not himself. So this year is really the first year, as far as I can see so far of the stories, that there's not going to be one issue that they could point to as to say this is the excuse as to why we didn't do it. So, I think this is like the push comes to shove here for the Warriors. It's Clay. Clay is on the end of his deal. He's going to be a free agent. CP was traded so that he could help push these guys past the finish line. They gave up an asset, though, a more than likely a declining asset if you're watching Jordan Poole play this year. They did not give up on Kuminga. They did not give up on Moody. They did give up on Wiseman. So you have these pieces, and you're like, okay, let's see it all work out. There's some small things like Wiggins just not being great, Clay not being great, but this is just who Clay might be. I think he deserves the opportunity to, play a few more games before we decide if this is who he is, or if maybe we can use him in a different way. Can he still be used in the same way? Because you talked about those issues that he has where it looks like he's trying to do something that maybe he cannot do with the defense, and that's what creates the turnovers. The game that the podcast that you missed when I talked to Ben, McDaniels, he was guarding Clay because there was no Steph, and immediately, not was it McDaniels? Yeah,
Yeah,
immediately,
McDaniels.
what happens is he's guarding Steph full court.
Clay full court.
I'm sorry, yeah, Clay full court, and Clay's getting so frustrated
for 2 possessions.
He has to push off with his right hand to bring the ball up the court. So I could already tell from those 2%. I was like, this is going to be bad for Clay. And then we saw the grabbing of the jersey and all that stuff that happened. So I don't think there's an excuse that they're going to be able to point to right now. Maybe they'll find one. Maybe it'll be Draymond not being able to keep his composure, or whatever. But I don't see a big bullseye as to the reason. You're just going to have to define the season as what it is and the team as what it is, and because there is no scapegoat here.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like some answers that I would lean towards trying out before making such a drastic change and trading someone is switching up the starting lineup. But Clay's reaction to Tim Kawakami already suggests that he's never going to come off the bench, and maybe that would be my adjustment: is to start Moody over him, bring him in with the CP unit instead of starting him with the starters. But I don't know. We know Clay likes to get his. They'd like to find him early to get him going. It's just I feel like it's a little messy where it's like, yes, I want to put my full faith behind the guys who've been able to do it for the past decade, but at the same time, is he able to?
I have a small conspiracy theory about that. Tim Kawakami asked Clay the question kind of about what we're saying, like how much rope do you give Clay to make sure that, to allow him to be Clay again? And Clay took that as, well, what do you want him to do? Bench me? And Kerr, by him saying that, it puts Kerr in the position of, oh, if he does bench Clay or if he does take Clay out, does he see the same thing that, that Kawakami asked or whatever? And when Kerr did not keep Moody in that game as we're closing the game against Sacramento, a game in which the Warriors were comfortably ahead for a large majority of it, in the back of his mind, I do wonder if Kerr was like, if I take Clay out right now, or if I don't put him back in right now, do I lose him? Because he was very emotional not emotional in a crying way or anything, but in the way that he took that question kind of way. And he wasn't flying paper airplanes while Tim was asking him this question.
But I like what MT said, where it's like, but there was still like 6 minutes left when they pulled Moody for Clay, or like was like 5 minutes left. It's like you could have just kept Moody in for a couple more minutes.
I wanted another 2 or 3 possessions. Maybe Moody's on a heater. Yeah. Our guy Davis, aka Drip, he disagrees with you about the Clippers. He says the Clippers are going to be their own worst enemy. He thinks the Warriors are going to get the W.
I hope so. I just think Clippers were coming off back to back, and it still was a close game.
They are too similar to the Warriors, though, to where I'm not sure that the Warriors, unless you give me a healthy dose of like Bones Highland or something, they just play at such a slow pace that I'm not worried like I am when the Warriors play the Thunder, where they're just boat racing up and down, and you're worried about all these possessions, and the Warriors are so tired. Like the Clippers kind of play to the Warriors style, so I just think the
We've
Warriors
kind of
are
always had the Clippers number too. Like, I mean, I think we lost to them last year, and Steph had like 55 or something like that. But in years past, like they've always been relatively close games, but Steph's always kind of come on top of those. But I just think with this one, they beat the Kings. The Kings were coming off a back-to-back, so they beat us and then go play a back-to-back against the Clippers. The Clippers beat them, and then the Clippers go play a back-to-back against us, and then we beat the Clippers, like a little triangle.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I was interested on like, I almost would have rather had Clay on Paul George and Moody on Harden, because I feel like Moody's like an interesting defender where he's not like this great like point of attack guy, and he's not really going to be able to guard like your really quick point guards. Like Fox will kill the guy, Malik Monk will kill the guy, Darius Garland, any of those really fast guards is taking Moody off the dribble, right? But I feel like Moody's kind of good at guarding those little like I watched a few possessions on Moody on SGA, and I was like, wow, Moody's like kind of keeping up, because SGA is a little more like slower, methodical, and I just feel like Harden maybe fits that mold that Moody could probably guard well, and I just didn't think he was good at guarding PG.
Moody's got those go gadget arms. That's why.
Yeah.
He just raises his arms. You're like, whoa, where does arms come from? So long. Davis also wondered if their excuse for this season, if the season doesn't go the way that we hope, would just be loyalty. You can't even use that as an excuse, though, because they've won 4 titles by running it that way. It would be more of a reason, but not anything that you could use as a scapegoat because you're running it back with the guys that you trust. Uh, I think for Steve Kerr, the hard part for him is, can he adjust because he sees something that doesn't bode well for the current team? Like, could Steve Kerr decide that, I don't know, Kevon Looney is all of a sudden not worthy of, or not at his best in playing 25 minutes a game? Does he go down to 18? Does Saric play more? Is Andrew Wiggins better with a little bit more rest, and you see Kuminga more? Like, those are the things that I think he can adjust to. But also, what makes that hard is he knows what he knows, which is, these guys, I can rely on them, and they've come through for me in the past. And I cannot say the same thing about Kuminga and Moody and guys like that. So that's what's really hard about this scenario, is you don't believe in those other guys yet because they haven't shown you. I like the Moody to start thing just because he is that sort of consistent energy. He's not going to give you more. He's not going to give you less. He's not going to throw the ball all over the place trying to make a bunch of plays. He may pass up a shot or two that could be frustrating, but I like it. I like him starting for Wiggins. And look, it's
The
Pods,
Wiggins
right?
long term though, not long term.
No, for right now.
Yeah.
But this is where he can try and gain a little bit of trust. But Steve Kerr has to put him in there. And I know he's making the decision. Well, is it Moody? Is it Kuminga? And just because of the way that they play, Kuminga fits a little bit better as a 4. But he's got to use these opportunities of where Wiggins slams his finger in the door or whatever happened. You go, okay, we don't want him to miss this game. But now I got to put Moody in situations that I would put Wiggins in, because I have to know if I can trust him in those situations. I think these are those moments. Same with when Draymond was gone, right? This is why I was so bothered that Kuminga didn't play 35 minutes a game. I'm like, just throw him out there, figure it out. By the time Draymond comes back, you have more data about who Kuminga is right now. So those are the things that frustrate me. And it looks like the solution is just to go some super small, because at least the super small guys can actually create shots. And that's why we saw the Steph Curry, Corey Joseph, and B-Pods lineup. And the last time I asked you about this, I said, could we see a Curry GP Pods lineup? And you said, no, they're too small. And they did it. They did it anyways. That's what they ran yesterday, was just a super small lineup, which I was so surprised because, man, nobody over 6'3" in the back court. It was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like they have like 10 players that they need to play. They have 10 guys who I feel like need to get run. And I have B-Pods in there. And I have obviously Moody, Kuminga, Saric, CP. Am I missing anyone? Like Corey Joseph, I don't think he should play once CP's back. But I wouldn't be surprised if he gets run.
That poor guy play.
I told you right when we got him, I was just gonna get Chris Chiozza hate for like.
Yeah, but at least he's better than Chiozza. But
he is better than Chiozza. But I think what's interesting is kind of how it seems like pretty well known within, I don't know, writers and reporters and even us, that it feels like we do have a relatively deep bench. And Kawakami said it is like the bench, that middle of the lineup is like pretty darn solid. And last year at this time, how many games had Lamb and Ty Jerome already clocked in as two ways?
We were counting them. We were counting down the games that they could use these guys in.
We haven't used a 1 2-way guy yet, which is interesting because Usman Garuba's got size, and I feel like he's kind of doing good in the G League.
Well, they're not even playing TJD right now.
I know,
getting no run whatsoever.
I know. So like it's just the starters, man. Like I need them to all just be capable. Like don't be a minus, and I feel like that's just not even that hard of a task for a guy like Clay, for a guy like Wiggs. And it seems like Wiggs found it out. Like I don't think Wiggs has necessarily had a bad game since when he broke out against OKC in the second OKC game when he went off. Like he hasn't necessarily had a bad game.
And he had a great start in that Kings game.
The Kings game
got tired, I think, at the end.
Yeah.
So we have a Saturday afternoon tip, Warriors and Clippers. Kind of an interesting time to play that game. Is it? That's not an ABC game, is it?
What
Just
time
a
is it at?
normal game, 1 o'clock,
I thought they don't start doing ABC games until like
second
ooh
half of the season or something.
no, first ABC game. Remember what it was last year?
Warriors Boston.
Yeah, Warriors Boston. Wasn't that like before Christmas
Yeah,
or
it would have
no?
been a couple weeks before Christmas because that was the same night as my holiday party.
So yeah, I mean I know that wouldn't Warriors Clippers wouldn't be the first ABC
No,
game.
it's just a
So
normal. It's just a normal
I'm sure it's just
game.
normal. Yeah.
NBC Sports Bay Area.
Are they in
So
Los Angeles or are they staying at Chase?
in Los Angeles.
Interesting. Okay.
So
Then they come back. Yeah.
next week it's at home against the Blazers on
I
Wednesday.
want to
So
go to that game.
they get a nice break here. You want
I'm
to
gonna
see
see if I can
Scoot? Is
go.
Scoot even playing?
He is kind of playing, but it's more so they have a Draymond bobblehead that looks awesome. He's like a broadcaster bobblehead that I want.
Yeah, that'll be good. And then
And
Friday against
we always talk, like me and my buddy Eric who live in the city, we're like, we got to find that like Tuesday versus Indiana Pacers game. And those Indiana Pacers tickets now will sell for like probably a good ticket because they're a really good team, but in previous years it's always been like that Tuesday Pacers game, which is always the cheapest out there. So I wonder if this year it's like the Wednesday Blazers game, or I'm sure whenever the Pistons come to town, I'm sure that's a cheap ticket.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, it's basketball. As long as the Warriors play most of their guys, it'll still be fun. You get to see sometimes you get some gems in those kind of games. Um all right. So and then like I said, they also play the Thunder. I'm just like Thunder again? Jeez. And those are the games.
4 Thunder games, man. 4
And, tho-
Thunder
and
games.
those games are there because the Warriors did not make it to the knockout round of the tournament here. But before we get out of here, we're going short today because you have some stuff going on. But I do want to take a look at this bracket here, and I want to get your thoughts on this in-season tournament and what finals do you want to see, or what championship game do you want to see, is kind of where I'm going with this.
I know
Because
right away what I want.
who
Kings
is it?
versus Pacers. Kings versus Pacers.
Okay, so so that's the ABC Saturday night championship Vegas game.
Getting the
Is
least
the
viewership.
team from Indiana. Um, I, I, I mean, Indiana very well. I mean, they're the number 2 seed here in this tournament. But if they were to knock off Boston and then knock off the Bucks in the same tournament, holy cow!
Well, the Bucks, you shouldn't write off the Knicks for an easy win. For the
Well,
Bucks to get an easy
I'm
win
just
over the
saying
Knicks.
who people want to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people want Boston versus Lakers, I'm sure. Boston versus Phoenix, one of the two. But I mean, the Kings and the Pacers, I think, would be the most entertaining game. Remember that, the 7 minutes of Pacers versus Hawks that we watched, and it was super entertaining. You'd literally just be that again. And then there's the subplot with Halliburton getting traded to the Kings, who are traded to the Pacers, who won the trade. They couldn't play together. Now they're like 2 of the best 5-point guards in the league. So I think that would be an entertaining storyline. I think for the Kings, though, I think their toughest matchup, besides whoever they play in the championship, is the Pelicans. The Pelicans have beaten them 2 times this season, whooped them the first time, a fully healthy Kings team. Second time, Kings didn't have Keegan. Pelicans still win by like 9. So I think that that's going to be the tough game for them, especially Pelicans have Trey Murphy back. So I think that's their like toughest matchup, is that first match. I think they could beat the Lakers. They've proven it time and time again. I think Phoenix is a little tougher for them, but I think they could beat Phoenix. Literally just the Pelicans. That's the one where I don't know if they get by, which is the first game. Lakers versus Phoenix must watch though.
That's Tuesday. That'll be this upcoming Tuesday. I want to see. I mean, either the Kings or the Suns. And in the other side, Boston is kind of must-see basketball. I don't know about the Bucks. The Bucks, even though they're the number 1 seed here, I'm still not quite sure if I am in love with their team right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it'll be fun. It'll be fun no matter what. And man, I kind of wish that I was in Vegas for this, but I'm kind of happy that I'm not, because I imagine it's going to be pretty insane with all the basketball junkies out there.
Yeah, I'm interested how the first go around with this is going to work. Like my thing was, I think I posed the question in our podcast that, do you think that at some point in the next decade or 5 years, that there'll be another in-season tournament, say within like the post All-Star break to mid-March segment,
Like
where
have
they just
two?
like have two in one. Because I feel like this worked. We haven't seen how it's going to finish yet, but it seems like the players cared. And Tyrese Halliburton had an interesting quote that Bill Simmons, I know, talked about, was like, we were kind of discussing amongst ourselves, like, how do you get like the big stars to care? They
Mhm.
have so much money already, this and that. And, we see this bracket right now. It's missing the Warriors, it's missing the Nuggets, some powerhouse stars that aren't playing. But you look at like, the Pacers, where Tyrese Halliburton's quote was like, look, I care because I've never won anything.
Yep.
Like I'm just a competitor. And I feel like sometimes we tend to forget, like, the All-Star break isn't comparable to, regular season basketball with stakes. Like, players can care less about that All-Star game, but this is actually regular season basketball. Games count towards your record, cool courts, cool uniforms, national televised game. Like, these, I think, do we just forget, like, these guys are just like the most grittiest natural competitors in like the world.
Yeah. You know what I would do? Now we don't have to sit here and talk about changes, because this is the first year. So far it's been fine. And like you said, Halliburton, that's why I look at De'Aaron Fox on the other side. Like, they're trying to become household names, and this is like a nice little thing for them. Uh I don't know who else would possibly gain the most from winning the whole thing or getting to the
Halliburton
finals.
or Fox, yeah,
Yeah,
those
those
two.
2 guys I think are the top 2, unless Zion just has a
Zion,
coming out party. Is he even he
he's
missed some
healthy.
games recently. Okay, he's healthy. But, the one thing that I wish you could do is I would extend the period a little bit longer, because the first 20 games of the season, it's not necessarily how the teams are gonna look by the end of the season,
But
because we got
isn't
this.
that to counterpoint? That's what lets the Pacers be here. That's what lets, yeah, I guess really just the Pacers. Like, that's kind of how I feel like they're able to sneak into something like this. Like, I feel like Orlando should have been here, and that would have been another one where it's like
That would have
kind
been
of
another
hot
team.
start. You don't really get to see them in May. I almost kind of like that for that purpose. I know you might not be getting the best team. Nuggets are the best team, but I think you kind of get some of these Pelicans, like the Pelicans, right? Like, they're the 3 seed. They wouldn't. I don't think they'd be in this if this was a playoff type of end of the season thing.
I would extend the period, and maybe somehow it becomes related to All-Star game weekend or something, but I would extend the period to where, I don't know, 3 what did the Warriors play? 3 games in
Or
their 4 games? And so, is 4 games enough to determine, whether or not a team should be involved in what they are telling us is an important tournament? I don't know. 6 or 7 seems to be a little bit more of a substantial number. Do you get to 10% of your season? Do you get to 8? That kind of thing is more so what I'm thinking about, which is, how do you make it even more impactful, so that the right teams make it? But then again, maybe like you said, an Indiana or an Orlando, if they were to get hot, or a Sacramento. But I feel like Sacramento and Indiana are probably going to be in the mix come the
we'll see.
postseason.
I hope so.
So
We'll see.
I,
What
w- I would,
what
I
this
just
kind of
want,
reminded me of?
just as a Warriors fan, what I wanted was, I wanted them to chunk it up and say, okay, maybe for the first round, we play these 4 games, and then we're going to take some time away, and then we come back, and here's the second round of games, and then we combine that somehow. I just didn't like
Yeah.
the first 15, 20 games of the season, because
Yeah.
there's teams
Because
that
then that
are,
means my team's not going to be there.
well, if the Warriors were there, I'd be way more interested for sure.
Yeah.
But I think it's still interesting even without them being there, and for their
Yeah.
benefit, maybe it does benefit them, so that they can actually play some of these other games at a normal pace, and not that Sacramento game was nuts, and the referees got their tight butt cheeks during that
Oh
game.
my
Like, what is
God.
going on here?
What I wanted to say is this kind of reminds me of, like, I'm not as much of an NFL head as, of course, I am an NBA guy, but this reminded me of if like divisions mattered in the NBA, where in the NFL, like, isn't the saying always kind of like, you have a divisional matchup, that game's just always going to be closer than if it was a non-divisional matchup? Isn't that
Yeah.
like a thing? Yeah, right. Like that's kind of how what this reminded me of. Like there felt like there was just every game was relatively competitive. Even when the Warriors are playing the Spurs, it seems like they might lose it at the end. Really, all those games, in season tournament games for the Warriors, were pretty competitive, and that's probably more of a tribute to their bad defense and their ability to not close games well. But I felt like it was relatively close games across the board, except for a few outliers like Chicago and Boston, where they're doing hack a drum and up 30. But no, I felt like, yeah, if divisions mattered in the NBA, that's what the in-season tournament felt like.
Well, the other thing I would have done is I would have made the quarterfinals brackets to be East versus West, because then you could get Sacramento and Lakers in the championship, or you could get a Boston and a Milwaukee.
Yeah, true. I'm with that. Like I don't think conferences should have mattered as much in like an in-season tournament.
I just think it would have been cooler because you'd have been able to see some cross-conference
Yeah.
plays of games that mattered, you know. All right, we're gonna get out of here. Bry's got some stuff to do, but on Sunday evening, we're not gonna go right after Eagles Niners, Rod and I, because I actually have I have some stuff to do on Sunday night after the game. But we'll be back in the evening. I'll get the live stream up and I'll post to our Discord early so that people know when Rod and I are going live. And I'm gonna try and get a pregame show out, which will be audio only for the 49ers Eagles tomorrow. Not gonna promise, but I'm gonna try and see if I can get that out early enough to where it matters. But all right, we got a short one here. Brian and I will be back at some point next week, and get back on a longer podcast. But fix your internet and all that stuff. You got your nice your little. Do you have a name for that space yet? Where all your computer and stuff is?
No, I'll think of one.
It's like is it like a laundry room technically or something?
Yeah, I think it's called like a mud room.
A mud room.
I've never heard of it, but yeah, yeah.
All right. Thanks to Davis, aka Drip, for hanging out. He's always hanging out with me and Rod after 49er games too. So all right, for Bry, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.